Hey, hey,
Cool.
y'all, we got Brandon Buck with us tonight. So, those of you that questions, Brandon's smart enough to answer them. Right?
Smart aleck enough to answer them.
Man, is it cold over there?
It is freezing cold.
Is it? Wow. Man, it's like 30 here.
It gets below 50 degrees around here. We figure it's cold.
Yeah, that's right. So, dude, we got a show coming up over there. When is that show? The 12th, that benefit show you're doing?
We have a show December 5th. And then,
Yeah.
and let me look at the calendar.
And I think it's the following weekend.
The following weekend on the 12th, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to tell people how that thing goes down right quick?
So it's a pure charity deal. The lane fees are $15 gift for a child. And you can't buy him for cash. You have to bring a gift. And then we do a little small raffle. You can give away a set of speakers or something like that. And if you bring a $10 value pet item, either a pet toy or dog food or cat, whatever, then you get in the raffle. And we take all the gifts that we get and we donate them out to a pet rescue and a charity for kids. I think Roy's Kids is the charity that we're doing this year and we did last year. Yeah. And I can't remember which my wife's the one that decides on the charity that we give to. I'm not sure on the pet deal, but it works out good, man. And we have like great support. These guys come in, some of them that can't make it, they'll come by and bring gifts a week ahead of the thing, just to be a part of it.
Right.
It's a fun deal.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like it. And this will be the third year that we've done it. And then this year it's going to be a baseball show. So there'll be points for it. I guess whatever your point system is.
Right. So this year he's going to entangle it with Base Wars. So Base Wars won't actually be there, but Brandon is going to use his meter, and so you can run in the Base Wars classes and all that stuff and get Base Wars points. But Brandon will be running it.
Right. But you guys, I guess, will be the weekend before y'all be up here for another show.
Yeah, I think we're up there on like the 6th. I think it's a Sunday.
Is it a Sunday? Okay.
I think it is, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Because we got a Mobile the Friday night before, the Saturday before, also in Mobile, and then Sunday at your spot at the fairgrounds. Yep.
That'll be the last show of the year.
Unless we can squeeze another one in.
No, I mean, does your year end in December or does it end in October like the other ones?
Oh, actually, no. Ours
ends in April.
Right.
It ends in April?
Yeah, ours will always go right up to our finals.
Which is, I didn't know when it was, so that's going to be in April.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
April.
Well, then, yeah, I don't know. We haven't talked about the shows for next year, but I figure we'll do the same as we did this year, at least.
I have a list already for you, some dates, and I planned on bringing them with me.
Sounds good.
About 7 of them, if I remember right.
All right, cool.
Yeah, scheduled all throughout next year.
That sounds good to me. So that's about one every other month.
Yep, every 6 to 8 weeks, roundabout.
Well, I'm happy to have you guys, man. I love this organization.
We're enjoying being over there too, man. So I'm gonna tell you guys a funny, all right? And Brandon, I don't know if I've even told you this, okay? But Brandon, you reached out to me years ago. Says, man, I want to be a part. I want to do it. You basically want to have shows there, right? But I didn't know what that meant. I was new, and I didn't know what it meant. And so I thought, well, you wanted to run Base War shows there. I didn't get it. And so I kind of put him on the back burner, y'all, for a year. We could have been in Shreveport a year earlier had I talked to him on the phone, rather than messaging and not understanding, But yeah, so I kind of did that. I feel stupid for it now.
Well, before I'm started though, what is this, second year now?
Yeah. We've been going strong for a little bit now.
And these guys around here, they love it.
Yeah, that's cool. We were just talking about it, and I don't have them worked out yet, so I'm not going to announce what they are. But we're working on a few more classes for next year as well. Uh, I'm not going to call it a trunk class or a no wall class, but we're going to be adding some classes in there to try to fill what we think we have a void with base wars.
Right.
So Jordan and I had a show Saturday, and we talked a good bit about it, and we talked about it on Sunday and come up with some good ideas. And I talking with Jimmy right before this, and he had some good ideas too. So it kind of shifts all the ideas.
Right.
So we all gonna have to have a powwow and come up put all those good ideas together. But
I don't guess I'm getting any feedback on class issues or problems or complaints that there's any not this class or not that class. At least not around.
The only I have yet to get anything, and I've been doing this now for probably classes like this for probably, I don't know, 3 years maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do trunk, no wall, just kind of like everybody else, but I had the trunks beating my walls, and I was like, well, this is stupid, you know. And so I changed it to what you guys see, and I'm kind of surprised that I haven't had any. I don't really hear any feedback either. And those numbers for those classes, I just sat to myself, and in my head, I was like, okay, 212s can compete with 212s ported, can compete with 215 sealed, and what are those numbers? And that's how I sat and made the classes, and nobody's bucked at all, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, everybody around here likes it, and they feel like that the classes are as about as fair as you could expect, you know, as far as one guy competing with the next. The only complaint that I've heard is the power designation.
It would be what?
The power designation, because when you first started, you didn't bump anybody up if they had big poles. But I mean, that makes a big difference. You know, if you got a guy that's got 212s on 10,000 watts,
right?
The guy with the 2K, he ain't going, you know.
Right.
And so I think that makes sense, but that's
exactly. That's the only way to keep it fair.
Do what?
So have you heard?
Sorry, that's the only way to keep it fair that way.
Exactly.
So have you heard anything since we added the power element to it?
Well, that's what I say. That's the only thing I've heard anybody complain about. But it's not really been legitimate complaints. It's like, oh man, I'm gonna have to bump up to such and such, you know.
Oh, right.
Legitimately complaining about it. Everybody understands it.
I understand now. Yeah. Well, I don't know exactly what we'll get worked out, but these other classes, I think they'll help. They'll have some kind of a power element to them as well, but I think they'll round us on out.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan and I had talked, and we had us a fairly decent, what we thought was a good plan, but Jimmy and I were talking just a minute ago, and it just put a full twist on it. So you know how that goes.
Oh yeah.
You know. But yeah, so
me not being a competitor, I can't really. I don't have a lot of useful input in that because you know I'm just not in the lanes.
Right. So now you build a lot of boxes, man, don't you? You don't you build a lot of boxes?
I do.
Yeah.
For this area, for one old man, it seems like a lot.
Right. And what's your favorite box to build?
Transmission lines.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what's the difference in a transmission line and a sealed box?
Well, your transmission line is essentially a port.
So what's the difference in a transmission line than a ported box?
Transmission line is a quarter wave design. You don't have a loading chamber. Your driver is in the port, as it were. And there's a lot of different ways to build them. Horns are transmission lines. You got a consistent dimension transmission line, A lot of people, when they hear transmission line, they think, well, it has to be built at the FS of the speaker, and it has to be this, and it has to be that. That's not true. There's some good rules to follow, and there's some real strict math if you want to follow it. And if you're building full range speakers, then that's a good idea. But as far as subwoofers are concerned, they're pretty forgiving. So if you have a limited amount of space, you know, you don't have to be so stuck to the rules.
Yeah. So I don't know anything about them. So I'm asking you some legit questions. Okay. So you said the quarter wave. So am I gathering that you want to go from the speaker to the opening to be a quarter wave?
A quarter wavelength of the tuning frequency of the enclosure. Now the hardcore rule is the quarter wavelength of the FS of the driver. So if you have a subwoofer, say if you got a single 12, you want to be able to line for it, and its resonance frequency is 33 hertz, then your line should be the quarter wavelength of a 33 hertz note. Which, right. Let's see.
It takes a mathematician to be able to figure them things out.
Yeah, they're actually, I'll tell you what, I can figure them out on a calculator, and I can't figure out a port on a calculator to save my soul.
Right.
So if you got that 33 hertz 12, your line needs to be 8.5 feet long. So that's the tough thing about them, is that it's like it's cramming 5 gallons of crap in a or 10 gallons of crap in a 5-gallon bucket. It's hard to do. If you got a big SUV, then it's not a big deal. But I love building them. Of course, they're not really an SPL enclosure. They're loud, and they're loud at every frequency that they play. But they don't really have an acoustical peak that's 10 to 12 dB louder than everything else. So they don't really work well in the lanes. So
that sounds like that'd be a good idea for a SQ build.
I think they're the perfect thing for an SQ build. I mean, because you get essentially you get the performance of the field
quality.
Yeah, you get the flat performance, and then even below tuning, if your line is tuned at 30 hertz, you're gonna have usable output down to almost down to 15 hertz. So you don't have to put a bunch of power on the low end in order to get good response. And plus, if you're doing an SQ build, you don't want the subwoofer to be 90% of the build, so they kind of want to hide them. So if you can get say an 8 in a transmission line, you still get low end response, where you wouldn't get that with a 10 or a 12 in a sealed enclosure.
Right.
So they really shine below their tuning frequency.
So I get that the frequency would dictate the length of the I'm gonna call it a port. It's not a port, but
right. It's hard to say line instead of port, but it either works. I mean,
okay. So is there anything that dictates the height and what the width of the line?
So the line area is the surface dimension of the driver. So the piston area, the usable piston area, or SD. So if you have a 12-inch sub, now the designations that you use for a 12-inch sub, that's not correct. That's a 12-inch sub doesn't have a 12-inch piston. It's got usually around 10 to 10
like 11.5 or something like that.
Yeah, well, it'll be closer to 10. But so you figure SD, you figure from the apex of the surround on one side to the apex of the surround on the other, which is dead center in the middle. Some people say 2/3 in, whatever. That's a rough approximation. It gets you close enough to the actual usable piston area. So most 15s have around 125, 128 inches of cone area. As an example, that's just something I could remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So if you figure surface area of 15 inches, though, you're going to end up with what, 254?
Yep, 250. 176. That's 254 and 18.
Yeah. Yeah, 254 came to my head because the first big transmission line I built was for 215, which was 254 inches, and that was in that white Dodge.
Right.
Well, like I said, man, I love them. And you heard my Civic.
Wow.
That's 4 6.5s in a line tuned to 30 hertz. doing 47 at 32 hertz.
Wow. Wow.
So that's no slouch in the
Right. Yeah.
47 dB with 4 6.5.
Right. Look it on the screen, Jimmy. I think Jimmy.
I see that. It's here.
All right.
No, I'm here.
Right.
There
So,
you go.
so Brandon, how about a ported box, man? You do many of those?
That's probably what I do most of.
Yeah. So, how do you go about figuring out the ported enclosures? What do you say for a 12? Or I know there's a lot. You can't just say a 12, but so there's a lot of people that use a lot of different
speaker. That's
ways.
not a fair question.
Do what now? Huh.
Well, I mean, I think I
I said,
understand.
what speaker? That's really not.
Right.
Well, I would use either Basebox Pro or WinISD.
Yeah.
If I'm going to model the sub, but really and truly, most of the subs that I've built for a lot of times. So I just, I can adjust up or down to give the customer whatever they want. If they want really good low end response, or if they want to just be stupid loud, you can kind of just you build so many, you can figure it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so some people say you use 16 inches per square foot of port, and I just wondered if you had a rule of thumb, something like that. Some people use the piston area, I guess, of the sub enclosure to kind of calculate their port area, and I just wondered if you had any.
I don't like that 16 inches per cubic foot rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Mostly because it's way abused, and like most stuff in car audio, it's not quite understood. It can work fine if your drivers are essentially the same excursion. But I see a lot of people building for, say, a 300 watt 12 with that kind of port area, or they might be building for a 2500 watt 18 with that port area rule of thumb. Neither one of those is correct, because you got a big high excursion sub that it's going to need more port area than that. Then you got this little small low powered sub. Well, it can handle that much port area, but doesn't need it.
Right.
You're actually going to lose some power handling.
Right.
When you dump a bunch of port area in a box for a low powered sub that's really compliant.
So a lower power sub needs a smaller port. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Area wise.
So basically, your port area is a function of two main things, as I understand it: tuning and excursion, or displacement.
Right.
You got cone area is part of your displacement equation, but Xmax is also part of your displacement equation.
Right.
So if you got a sub, because you got a lot of PA subs, a PA 18-inch PA sub may only have 6 millimeters of excursion, one-way excursion. But
Right.
you got some 6.5 that's got 13 millimeters of excursion. So the old cone area is king rule that worked whenever every sub had the same coil in them, the same wind height coil. Now we got coils that are 3 inches tall, so you got 30, 35 millimeters of excursion one way. Well, a 12 with that much excursion can move as much or more air as an 18 that's got 10 millimeters.
Right.
So it's displacement and tuning. And something that a lot of people don't understand, you don't need as much port area if you're tuning low as you need when you're tuning high, because this is not an airflow thing in an enclosure, it's an air agitation thing. And so if you're tuned at 40 hertz, your air is being agitated 80 times a second in that port. If you're tuned at 20, it's only moving through in that port 40 times a second. So you're actually moving a lot more air at higher frequencies.
Right.
If you're building for actual SPL or bandwidth, and you're not building to make wind.
Right.
That's a whole other situation if you're trying to make a windy build, but then they don't do the numbers.
So let's just say we had a speaker that had an area of 100 inches, right? And let's just say it moved, it had a 2-inch excursion. So we're talking 200 inches of volume, right?
No.
That displacement you're talking about, right?
Yeah. I can't answer that question. or I can't confirm.
Right. Well, it's hypothetical.
Let's go for that. Let's just go with that 200 inches.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So if we got 200 inches of volume, air volume moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
The speaker's moving it. How will we get to a port size from that?
With the modeling software.
Oh yeah.
Right. If you don't really know what
question, sir.
you need, and I say that not sarcastically because I'm not good at math, man, and I don't need to be. I don't do math in my head. I could not figure a port on a piece of paper if you put a gun to my head. But essentially, what you're looking for is you're looking for a low port velocity. You know, you don't want your port to be noisy.
Right.
But you want as much output as you can get from it if you're if building for SPL. That's another difference there is if you're building for bandwidth for like an SQ build, well, you're not going to want a lot of port area that has an acoustical peak because you're trying to get flat response. You want to, instead of pushing that peak up, you want to push that peak down the bandwidth path. In other words, closer.
Right. You want to smooth it out.
Exactly. You want to smooth that bandwidth out rather than create that acoustical peak there, which is, of course, if you're looking for SPL, then you want that peak. So, and again, because I don't compete, you know, I know there's a lot of guys that they kind of got a ratio of port area to box volume for making loud builds, and that's a different number than it is if you're building for daily or for some SQ setup, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it gets to that, like I was saying earlier, with the transmission line, I can build a transmission line with a calculator in my phone.
Isn't that something?
The only reason I can do it without a calculator with a ported box is because I've been building them since 1985.
Right.
I mean,
that'll do it.
Yeah, but if I'm trying to build an SQ setup, then I'm going to model it. But most of the stuff that I build, just very basic ported boxes, I don't model because I've modeled in the past for most of the subs that I sell.
Yeah.
You know, and then a lot of stuff that I build for is pretty common. So, you know.
And what are you selling the most of right now?
Scar audio.
Scar.
Yeah.
And so, how does Scar relate to, say, what's another one you built a lot for?
Probably Serwin Vega. And
all right. So, airspace wise, how do they compare? Does Scar use more or less airspace?
Well, again, that boils down to what you're trying to achieve with it. Let's just say, for instance, a 500 watt sub with somewhere around 12 millimeters or 15 millimeters of X-Max.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it comes from Diamond, if it comes from Morel, if it comes from Scar, they're all going to work in about the same enclosure.
Right.
Now, you get manufacturers. One thing Scar tends to do is they tend to recommend on the high side of what the norm would be. So your normal, I guess, average 12-inch sub will be firing about 2 cubic feet. And most of theirs, they're looking at 2.5 to 3.25.
So they're a little bigger.
They're a little bigger. Now, bigger boxes get you better low-end response. You know, it takes space to make bass. And so they recommend on the big side so that their subs perform on the low end. And that works great, but that doesn't mean, and I always tell you, I say this on Facebook probably more times than a lot of people want to hear it, but manufacturers don't make rules, they make recommendations.
Right.
You know, you see a lot of guys get in these threads and they say, well, no, you can't, well, this sub work in this box. No, it's too big. Well, too big for what? You know, it depends what your goal is. The box may be too small for the goal that you're trying to accomplish, but it may be perfect if you have a different goal.
Yeah.
It's like there's not really a one right way to do anything in car audio.
Agreed.
Or in audio in general. I shouldn't say car audio because it's in loudspeaker design. Like I say, it's box volume is going to change for a lot of different reasons. Port area too.
Right. So there's a guy. He's got this up here. Can you see this on the screen?
I can.
So he says, what would you recommend?
What if I built two 12-inch, 3-inch coils strictly for port wars? Okay, what do we?
I think he's asking what type box, maybe, or probably a port. No, it'd be a ported box because of port wars. But I guess he's thinking about size, maybe.
Probably for a couple of 12s, about a cube and a half per sub would be my guess. Probably 30, 35 area, square inches of cone area. Excuse me, port area per sub. If you're building for SPL.
Yeah, for a port SPL, for a port wars.
Yeah, for port wars. I'm sorry, I'm thinking base wars, port wars.
Right.
Yeah, definitely go with a big port and a small enclosure.
That how the little CRXs are doing it?
That's anybody's doing it. Played around. We pulled a little 6-inch speaker out of a TV, one of the big screen TVs, the old TV that one of my friends had. We pulled that thing out. We built cardboard boxes and used up to 6-inch ports. We ended up going back down, I think, to a 4-inch port, but we put it on a 1200 watt amp. We were burning it on a 1200 watt amp. At probably 4 ohms. Then we went up to I guess probably one of my 5Ks that was in my truck, and was the last time we burped it because it didn't live after that. But we did like 162 decibels in the port with that thing, and it was about probably a quarter cubic foot box with a 4-inch port that was about 10 inches long. I have no idea what it was doing that. We didn't calculate it. We were just playing, but we built it out of a cardboard box.
Huh.
And then we started stacking. Once we started getting some numbers that looked like they were impressive, then we essentially just cut some panels and wrapped them around it with duct tape. We kind of had a rule where we weren't going to use any nails or glue. It's got to be just thrown together as quickly as can. We were like 162 dB we got out of that thing. It was crazy.
Dang. Huh.
But a lot of that has to do with where you put the mic in the box.
Right.
Because if you put the mic in the wrong spot, it's not going to be that loud.
That's true.
Kind of like putting the mic in the kick in the car. There's the loudest place inside the box, just like there's the loudest place inside the car. And out there in the middle of the port ain't it.
Right.
You got to get in the corner where that pressure is building.
Now, that's some good education right there. I didn't know that.
Let me go turn my heater off, guys.
Yeah. So, hey, Jimmy, so you rebuild a lot of speakers, man. Hey, you're muted, man. You got yourself muted. There you go.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So, so you built. How long has your vehicle been together?
As of now, my current build is like I want to years old.
And so, how many times have you reconned the speakers?
Too many.
Okay. So, hey, so this is my question. When you recon the speaker and you put it back in the vehicle, right? Do you think that the small parameters change of the speaker? Are you able to put it back exactly like, say, the manufacturer gives it to you?
Absolutely. Well, it depends. If I'm getting a factory recone and a factory drop-in, per se, yes, I would say it's the same. But if I'm getting, say, an aftermarket one, like, say, from Dan Horner or from Corey SPL or the guys that make the aftermarket drop-ins, then no, absolutely not. I think things change because they use different coils, different spider packs, different surrounds. Everything's different if you go to change that, yes.
So what I wanted to ask is, when you change those, have you noticed any difference in your vehicle, SPL up or down, based on, I guess, what would be the changing
The only change I would say that I notice is when the subwoofer's still brand new and not broke in. But after the subwoofer breaks, it's much the same. It's the same, my resonant frequency hasn't changed. I'm still throwing triple the rated power to the sub, which is my own fault. But no, nothing really changes. But in that same sense, I would have to say I was taught by a lot of people how to do recones, and I've been doing them for a while. So
Yeah.
knowing exactly how to tune the speaker, exactly glue it down, exactly everything together makes a big difference than just slapping one in and praying for it to work. And I've seen a lot of people here lately online that are just trying their own speaker recones, which, hey, it's their own prerogative. Do what you got to do, but you might be wasting that money if it's not properly shimmed and properly glued in correctly.
Right. So here's what I wonder. All right. So Jimmy, uh, did Drew design your box or did you do it?
No, Drew designed my box, but I would
Okay.
have to say I scooted my back. I would say a good 7 to 8 inches farther than he did because it was my daily driver.
Right. Okay. Well, so really, what I'm kind of trying to pick out here is it doesn't really matter who designed it, really, but uh, so you're
Yes, I
changing
have the world's
your
loudest
small
nitro.
parameters. You're changing your Thiel small parameters, but your stuff doesn't change in your car. And so you see where I'm going with this, Brandon? The Thiel small parameters are not the same, but the car reacts the same.
Well, okay. To begin with,
I mean, it depends on what I'm changing.
TS numbers are small signal parameters. So once we get in the SPL world where we're putting 2 and 3 times the power on the driver, then it was TS numbers pretty much out the window.
Okay.
It's about the only usable parameter in that sense. And yeah, but I mean, and with that being said, if you recone a sub with completely different parts than what it came with, and you put it back in the same build, you're still not going to notice a lot of difference because you still have the same motor with the same strength. It's not like you can put a vastly different coil in the sub. So, like if it's a Death Bounce DB4,
I disagree with that, sir, because you can put a lot stronger coil factory sent in that motor in that basket. You can put better coils, better spider packs, better surrounds, better everything.
Well,
so I mean, I've seen guys, honestly though, I've seen them start with a $110 sub, and by the time they buy the recone and everything else like that, they damn near got like a $200 or $300 sub. But I've seen them change everything in a subwoofer.
but if you have a gap that's 150 thousandths wide, you have a limitation to the coil that you can put in that gap. Sure, you can change the parameters within the constraints of the motor, the gap, and the depth, and everything else. What essentially I'm saying, okay, if you got a factory built sub, it's a 2,500 watt sub, whatever. Wherever they get their coils from, most of the coils that we get here in the States come from Precision Econoline, if they're good coils.
China.
So you go on one of the places that sells parts and you buy some PE coils and you buy some spider pack. If you buy the same number of spiders that the factory put in it, you don't know if they're exactly the same spider or not, but you're going to get a sub that's very similar in performance to what you had to begin with. Now, if you put 5 spider packs in and the factory put 2, well, then of course you're going to change dramatically. So yeah, you can change. Mostly suspension you can make major changes with. But again, with coils, unless you got a company that's putting garbage coils in their subs, you can't make that big of an improvement because you don't have enough room for it. You put a taller coil in there, you're going to bottom it out. You can put a shorter coil in and you can maybe do better at certain frequency. But my point is, back to talking about TS numbers, the being small signal parameters, you're not going to make a huge change where you got to do a whole rebuild if you're reconing subs with something other than factory parts.
So Jimmy, when y'all recon the subs, do y'all just put the different parts in them to make them stronger and hold more power normally? Is that the goal most of the time?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Just to make them hold more power and to make them, I guess I would say, last longer
Yeah, okay.
on the amount of power. There's a lot out there like me in the SPL world that feed their subwoofers double, triple, even quadruple the amount of power. I mean, it's not if your sub's going to hold it, it's eventually going to fail. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
Yeah. How much power do you have? You got 15s, right? Is that 18s?
Mm-hmm.
How much power is on each one of yours?
I have a 7500 at 0.5, which I've seen almost 9K out of an amplifier. So I would say 9K to a subwoofer that's rated at 500.
Oh, wow. Well, now we know how you got so good at recons, huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so from this conversation, man, it seems like the Theo small parameters just kind of go out the window. Without a few things that are not really Theo small, but like X Max, I guess is probably some things you want to pay attention to. X Max, and what's the other big factor you think?
Well, if we're talking about SPL,
we're talking about SPL.
X-Max is pretty important, but it depends on where you're trying to burp. If you're trying to just get an absolute loud number, then you're going to follow the cabin of the vehicle and what it tells you. So you're going to end up at the 60, 65, 70 hertz range. And at that point, you don't need a high excursion sub.
Right.
Because you need a sub that can move a little bit, a whole lot of times very accurately. Because if you're burping at high frequencies, again, if you're at 50 hertz, that sub's got to oscillate 100 times a second.
Right.
It doesn't need to move 2 inches. Right. When you get out there 2 inches, then you start getting some tone distortion. You start taking a lot more risk of damaging the driver. So an SPL sub is really, it's a different animal than, say, for instance, a big windy build demo sub. So you don't need a big tall motor that's got a 4-inch deep gap. You need a super strong motor that's really concentrated in that 2.5 or so inches of wind height that you've got. And that way you can get really strong SPL numbers. And because I build a lot for SCAR, guys for like the big build that we did, it's got 4 ZVX18s playing from nothing to 40 hertz. Well, then from 40 to 80, we put DDX12s. DDX12s it's just a 2.5-inch coil sub, and it doesn't have a lot of X-Max. But up above 40 hertz, the sub shines. It'll play lows, but you got to put it in the right box.
Right.
So that there's a purpose there. It's like, if you want to make low notes, then you want a high excursion sub. If you want to make SPL, well, you don't make SPL at 20 hertz.
Right.
That's normally something you're going to do above 40 in a purpose-built deal. And so you don't, like I say, it's a different. That's not to say high excursion subs can't be loud, but again, if you're trying to optimize for.
I've seen the 60 at 20 hertz.
Yeah, right. But you don't see 60 at 20 hertz at every show you go to. Right. 55 and 58 at 50 hertz.
No. Right.
So, there's exceptions to every rule, and I don't really make rules. I'm just talking about averages.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, that's cool. Learning a little bit tonight. Knew I would. Let's see if we got. I'm gonna scroll through the little. Hey, Brandon, can you see the comments?
Where would I look for them?
Somewhere on there, there's a button to where you will be able to.
I see them. I see them. It was over there. It said private chat, and now I've clicked comments, and now I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
749. So okay, I probably missed a whole bunch of them.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to look for questions right quick. I always try to get everybody's opinion on the building an enclosure because everybody's got their own way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
Yes and no, Dan. Of course, I've broken baskets before, though, because of the frames.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean that's what we were talking about earlier. I mean, there's only so much core you can stuff in a given gap.
Absolutely.
Right.
So if we're
Hell,
dealing,
I've seen 5-inch coils out there now.
yeah, I'm looking at my little blazer that I'm about to build. I'm thinking about using those big 5-inch motors. I'm gonna build my own subs and probably do 24 subs.
5 inches, man. That's a PVC pipe.
Yeah.
Stay around at 3.5. I'll be honest with you. 3.5 seem to be more efficient when it comes to the SPL world. A lot of people actually, I would say, that's where the rat is in a 3.5 to a 4-inch coil.
Yeah, ground.
Depending on if it's an aluminum coil, if it's copper coil, if it's flat wound, or if it's round. So I mean, some of them parameters matter too as well.
Sure. A couple years back, I remember
Personal
Brown
opinion.
stopped making a 4-inch coil sub, and the reason they did it is
Oh,
because
there's 4-inch.
the 3-inch coil subs to be way more efficient and better for use in SPL in what they were doing. You know, so yeah, more coil.
Well, here's one for you. Sorry, I ran the DB3s, which was a 3.5 inch, and I ran for almost a year, and I switched over to the DB4, was a 4-inch coil, and I actually gained 2.5 dB.
Going to a 4
Same box, same amplifier. Yes.
Well, I thought you said that the 3.5s were more efficient.
I don't know. I mean, I can't honestly tell you that because I've never really clamped my system as far as power, so I don't really know where that's at. But you know, honestly, from going from a 3-inch coil to a 4-inch coil, I gained that 4-inch coil. Same box, same enclosure, same everything.
Mm-hmm.
Which I know that doesn't make sense, and it shouldn't have happened.
Well,
but I did.
The efficiency of the coil is basically its moving mass. So you have a smaller coil which weighs less. That it's and I think where the balance comes in is the amount of power you can dump in a big hefty 3-inch coil as opposed to the amount of power that you can dump into a big hefty 4-inch coil. I think again from Ground Zero's experience, it wasn't saying that it's not possible to be loud with a 4-inch coil. But when you take and as a manufacturer, they're going to step back and say, okay, well, how much power is the average SPL competitor who's going to buy our product? How much are they using? Well, they're not using 40,000 watts. They're using 10,000 watts or 15,000 or whatever it is. And they found that the 3-inch coil sub performed a lot better than a 4-inch coil sub in that range of power. You know, and that's, I mean, everything is scalable. And so they're coming back again to that average, you know, but just like with the DDXs from Star, man, I mean, if you want to build just a straight SPL build on a budget, the DDX is the best sub on the market, man, because it's a 2.5-inch coil that'll handle probably a 1,200 watts RMS all day, every day. You can dump 5,000 watts into them on a burp and not hurt them. You know, I've seen some crazy stuff with those subs, and for less than $200 sub, man.
Wow. And what sub is that?
The Star Audio DDX.
So I don't really know anything about Scar, and I'm gonna be honest here. I don't know anything about any speaker that isn't a kicker speaker.
Right.
Right? I'm just that guy. But so does Scar target SPL people? I mean, I see a lot of Scar. I think it's the reason I see it is the price point, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
The Scar targets the
Scar is a low end sub, but everybody loves it. It's actually a good quality sub, but it's a lower end sub, as I would say personally.
So their business model, if you will, is not for the average person buying a sub to go in their car. It's for the lightweight audio guy, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing.
I say lightweight. I don't really mean that, but
No, I understand. I've been selling this company since 2013, and I've got better quality products in the store. I've got Morel, I've got Diamond, I've got Serwin Vega, I've got really good stuff.
do you have Kicker?
I used to have Kicker. I don't sell Kicker anymore. I just
That's
had
a hard line. You gotta go.
very few
Joking.
people buy it, you know. And
Right.
being on the internet, it's hard to sell in the store. Scar is Scar's a great product for the average guy that just wants a little bump, or even somebody that's competing but they're on a budget. What Scar is essentially selling is technology that's long been paid for. They're off the shelf products. They've got a couple of unique baskets that they had to, but the parts that they're using, their amplifier boards and everything, they're 15 or 20-year-old technology. Some people hear that said and they go, "Oh, well, that's horrible." Why? It works. It's 20-year-old tech that still works great. You know, the people get good power. And one of the things about Scar is go pick whatever amp that they make from the bottom of the barrel to the best thing they build and put it on a dyno, and you're going to get rated power out of it. So you don't get BS power numbers. You know, they may not be the lowest distortion. They may not be the highest sensitivity. They are great for 90% of people who do audio that don't want to spend a bunch of money, but they want something that sounds good. And I've pulled some Hertz speakers out and put Scar speakers in and had people leave here with a big grin on their face. So they're not junk. You know, they're not the best thing out there, but the Hertz that I pulled out was their entry level. So, you know, it's not like every manufacturer. You got a high-end manufacturer, that doesn't mean all they make is high-end equipment. Everybody's got an entry level and everybody's got an upper end. But by and large, what Scar's selling was innovative 20 years ago. It's not now. It's just the average thing. But I mean, I think that's a lot of car audio companies, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure you're probably right about that.
If you can bust the cover off of one of Scar's SK line amps and look, and there's half a dozen other manufacturers who's got the same exact board. You know.
So how about their speakers? How do they rate in efficiency? I mean, are they real compliant? Are they not very compliant? You know, are they?
You talking about subs?
Yeah.
They're I guess average. They're not quite so compliant as some of the stuff you see from brands like Diamond or Kicker. They're definitely more SPL friendly. And it depends on, of course, the line that you get. I mean, their little IX line, which is the bone entry product, 150, 200 watt subs. You know, they're great subs, man. They do well. You get up to the ZVXs, and they're pretty stiff. I'm using the ZVX 15 in my truck right now, and they're pretty damn non-compliant. And I've got a ZVX on an 8K, on a Sound Digital 8K. So it's a 1500 watt rated sub taking an 8K. I play my music loud.
Well, so over there, how many of those? What are they competing with mostly over there in Shreveport? I mean, I see a lot of Scar. What's most of them competing with over there?
I'd say probably Scar. Used to see a lot of Sound Cube.
Yeah.
And DD was pretty common here.
Is it still?
I'm not seeing as much DD anymore.
Me either. I'm not seeing as much DD anywhere.
I'm not either. And I thought maybe you might see some more of it now that they've got that high excursion line, the ESP line. That was the thing with DD.
Big current.
You had so many people trying to build demo builds, and DD subs are not. They're not high excursion subs. They're SPL subs, like what we talked about earlier.
Yeah. What about you, Jimmy? What in your area? What do you think? What do you see the most speakers? What kind? What brand you think?
Well, I mean, competition or daily use?
No, I mean in our competitions in Base Force.
Competition, I would say, everything from down to Scar to, I mean, just really every brand. I mean, there's all kinds of there.
But you don't think there's one more than
And
the
I
other?
see it. I would say I see more sundowns in my area than anything.
Yeah.
Sundown and death bounce.
Yeah. See, we don't see much depth bounce down here. I do see some sundown, but not a lot. Not a lot. It's a lot of Scar.
Well, it's
Death Bounce is another
sundowns are a
product.
little on the higher end.
What'd you say, Brandon?
I say we see a lot of Death Bounce here too.
You do?
A lot of Alfred audio. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that's what Jimmy runs in his vehicle as well.
They got a solid product, man. It's good stuff.
Absolutely. I've been running their product for almost 4.5 years, and I love it.
I talked with them back in 2016 when they were first coming in. It may have been late 2015, but we had just moved the shop from one area to another, and I was kind of cash strapped, and I ended up not taking the line. But it was, like I say, it looked solid then, and then as I started seeing it, people's cars.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I can honestly say if it's something that you're interested in, I'm on Team Death Bounce, and you can always hit up Vladimir. He's always looking for new people. So,
yeah,
I mean,
I've actually
just because she's
for a couple of different subs.
They have, the Alfred Audio product herself has, everything. I would like to say small end to budget line to, to high end excursion, just everything. And they even have, I would like to say they're trying to step over into a little bit of the S world as well too. So they have really a little bit of everything for everybody. I know I'm a little biased because I've ran years, but yes.
That's what I like to see more of is sound quality, but we don't. It's unfortunately, I guess, because I'm an old man, so we just don't see the interest in
Look
it.
into their Black Hydra line.
Well, I'm more talking about people interested in building SQ stuff. I don't really care what brand it is at that point. I like to see more focus on SQ, but like I say, we don't. That for whatever reason, that's not happening these days.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know about why the people aren't so into it. Honestly, you want my real opinion. I said I don't know, and I don't know, but my opinion is the orgs have kind of taken them off a pedestal where they belong. And so basically they don't get promoted. They don't get, when I say promoted, I don't mean, hey, we're having an SQ show. I mean, make a show out of this build that this guy spent 1 million hours on, right? It doesn't get glorified the way a Wendy build can get glorified on YouTube. There's no way to glorify an SQ build, really.
Yeah. Well, and because I kind of flip to both, I fit in the bass head world. I love loud bass, but I also love sound quality. Excuse me. And I think one of the things that I see from a lot of guys that are focusing in sound quality is there's too much looking down their noses from one guy's build to the next, and you get the SPL guys, they're looking down their nose because the SQ builds don't do more than 140 dB. And the SQ guys are looking down their nose at the SPL guys because they got bullet tweeters and they do 140 dB, more than 140 dB, And it's like, there's times when I want to listen to music that I don't want it to be 140 decibels. I want it to be 110 or maybe 90. Then there's other times when I want it to be 160. I love it loud, but then and I think, I don't know, again, what the reason is, I just don't see that much interest as a shop owner. I don't see that much interest from the younger crowd in the sound quality. I just don't. They're just not interested in it.
And I think it's because you can visually see stuff happening on YouTube for a loud, windy build, but you cannot see anything visual for on YouTube for an SQ build. The only way you're going to get that is sit in it and listen.
It's tough to market for sound quality, basically.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no doubt. Back whenever I was 16 years old, sound quality was a big part of what we did, but there was no YouTube. I mean, if you somebody's build, it's because you had been in it.
Right.
If you knew anything about it, it's because you had been in it or at least seen it at a show.
Yeah.
Well, nowadays, you can see something in China and see how loud it is. And of course, we couldn't do that back in those days. We had magazines that we waited around for a month.
Right. That was the only way to see it.
Yes,
Yeah, you can tell how loud one is in a magazine, but you can damn sure see all those fancy panels that they had, and lighting and paint and stuff like that. So that was a big deal then. And it still is in the car world, but I mean, I just don't see it that much in SPL.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be that old man that's
starting to come back.
In my day, it's like whatever guys like, they like, and I'm a part of it. It doesn't matter to me. I'm gonna do what I do, and if some people like it, great, and if some people don't like it, well, that's fine too.
Yeah. Well, I personally hope to bring some sound quality to Bass Horse. The only reason it's such a challenge is judges, right? Judges. I personally just don't have it in my gut to ask anybody to come somewhere and judge a show and not pay them. And it just doesn't generate enough money to make it live, to even, there's that. And then actually having the judges. I mean, I don't even know that many, it's, I don't, that's the only reason we don't have it is because I don't have a network of judges. If I had a network of judges, we'd have it tomorrow.
Well, and I think another problem that you see with SQ stuff is the subjective nature of the judging, and I really think that hurts it. I know for me it does, and I know this would never happen, but I think ideally what I'd like to see is the SPL judge blindfolded and taken to a vehicle, and he has no idea what car he's getting in or what equipment's in it, or who owns it.
That would be cool.
Because it's just absolutely impossible to take the personal opinion out of something when you're not using, like an SPL meter doesn't lie. It doesn't matter if the guy running the meter hates you or hates your equipment or hates your car. The meter says 150,
right.
It's not 150, and the only thing that you can really do in the sound quality world that's objective like that is going to be an RTA. So all these other aspects of a sound quality build, man, it's just tough, and again, I'm not ashamed to say there's a lot of snobs in the SQ world. And there are a lot of guys looking down at everybody else's equipment, and that doesn't make for good judging, And
right.
Now I do know some judges, some SQ judges, and they're not like that. But they don't act like that, I should say. But
right.
when in the car, you never know what somebody's thinking, man. And so that's the thing that always kept me away from the sound quality, actual competition part of it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, man, I used to love the sound quality. And when we're talking sound quality, y'all, we're not just talking how good does it sound and how does it separate and how wide is the stage and how tall is the stage and all stuff. But, man, you had to have your install judged. You had the RTA. It was so many things that made it fun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it was a little frustrating. I can't tell you how many people got out of my truck and says, man, it was just too basic. And I had the subs completely turned off. They weren't even on, but they just saw that wall back there and they're like, it's too basic. They weren't even played. If they were doing anything, that resonated for my 6.5. You know?
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of what I was talking about. I mean, that influence, that opinion influences the judge. It's not possible for it not to. So how could you possibly correct that in an SQ competition? Well, you can't blindfold people and drag them around, even though that would be the best way to do it for the competitor. The only other way is to have, just like they do at car shows, have multiple judges. But SQ judging takes a long time.
Yeah.
It can't take place in the lanes close to the SPL guys.
Right.
So, that just makes, like you were talking about, I mean, it's an enormous amount of work to judge SQ as opposed to SPL.
I was bringing it out for Base Wars, and I did a show in Pensacola, Florida, and we were at a racetrack, and I had only 3 SQ cars that night. I took out to judging them. I don't know how long it take. I was judging cars and didn't really pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
But there was 3 cars, and when I finished judging those 3 cars, I stood up, and the track owner was standing there with his hands on his hips because the SPO line had backed around the track, and he couldn't get the race cars off the racetrack into the infield. But he couldn't find me to do anything about it, and so I spent the rest of that night was a blur trying to catch up the SPL line. So
yeah, I mean, there's no question that for any organization, even like me being a shop, I mean, SPL is where it's at. That's what people want.
Yeah.
And I get it. I like it.
Yeah.
And if I'm listening, I wouldn't be happy with an SQ system in my vehicle.
Right.
That was just your perfect. I mean, it can be a show-winning SQ build. 140 dBs of bass ain't getting it from me, pal. Like it ain't gonna do it.
Right.
Get my weeks.
SQ build had 815s in it.
Yeah, I mean, I ain't got a whole lot of hair, but I like to get it moved around some.
Yeah. The truck that I'm going to build soon, it's going to be an SQ build. It's going to be I'm going to set it up for SQ, then fill the rest of it with subs.
Yeah.
But I like to listen to Queen at 160 decimals. That's what I like.
But see, that's what we did when I was a kid.
Absolutely.
That's what we did, and we were listening to Boston and Journey and Queen.
Right.
And rap was somewhat new whenever I was a kid. We listened to hip hop. We listened to R&B. I mean, and everybody listened to everything. And we wanted it loud, and we wanted loud bass.
Yep.
So, and even the guys that you would quote unquote call SQ guys, I mean, everybody wanted better bass than what we had. And so now I think the SQ crowd has gotten to this. Like I say, it's unfortunate, but there's this, I don't know if you'd call it a rivalry or what you would call it, but the SQ guys just don't want to have anything to do with the SPL guys and vice versa. And I hate that.
Yeah.
I love both of them, man. I can go sit in an SQ car and just fall in and just be absorbed.
Yeah. I tell you what, I'm on a mission to change their way of thinking. Wait till I get my truck done and let's sit in there with my 6.5s and my real speakers playing, not these loudspeaker stuff that sounds like dog dirt, and let's just listen and try to give them some inspiration to make them make music great again. What you think, Jimmy? Jimmy was raised.
Absolutely.
Jimmy's our age, so he remembers.
Yeah, and I can't also,
Yes.
I've put a lot of thought into this. I think one of the reasons why we don't see a lot of interest in SQ anymore is music these days. Everything is compressed, and which is great. I mean, digital music
It's garbage.
It's so awesome that we can put. I've got 25,000 songs in an SD card in my radio. I can listen to anything I want to listen to anytime I want to listen to it. But because so many people now are listening to music on a smartphone or in some inexpensive headphones, studios businesses cater to the customers who want to spend money.
Right.
And so studios are mixing music for people who are listening on smartphones. So they don't even hear the compression. They don't know the difference. And that's the whole thing I've always tried to tell people. If you don't have a benchmark, then you have no way of saying whether a thing is good or bad. You know, you have to have a benchmark. And I mean, I've been in Las Vegas listening to $100,000 worth of stereo equipment that was 2 speakers, a CD player, a preamp, and an amplifier. You know, and that's a benchmark.
Right.
Not saying that it's worth $100,000, but I've listened to that sort of music. So then you come back and when I listen to something else, I've got a benchmark to compare everything else that I hear to. And if the best thing you've ever heard is an MP3 that's compressed down to 96 kilohertz,
right,
I can't even explain to you what you're missing. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't.
Right.
It's like telling somebody,
true.
a blind person, what something looks like. You can't do it.
That's true.
You know?
That's very, very true.
And that's not, again, I'm not trying to say anything ugly about anybody or anything, but the fact
It's
that
what they know.
People these days don't have that benchmark to know anything about it. They haven't seen it, haven't experienced it. So
yeah,
it still blows my mind, even listening to a lot of 80s music and stuff, or 70s and 80s music that I've got on MP3 that is compressed, how much more dynamic that music is than the new music that I've got.
Yeah.
Simply because of the way it was mastered. You know, the dynamic range there is it's insane.
Yeah.
So you can't beat the old vinyl records. I don't care.
Do what?
I said you can't beat the old vinyl records.
No, man, the range is there. The dynamic range is there. And it's like, I'm not that hardcore. Vinyl records take up a lot of space, and I don't like the sound of the background sound. But no, as far as dynamic range, all that old analog stuff, man, it sounds great. I mean, you can't accomplish that with compression. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're up against for the SPL scene. I mean, like I say, it's such a niche market now that
I want that same sense. So when SPL, you have people now that are actually rebasing music on in there and adjusting the levels higher, and taking a song, we'll just say by Queen, and going in there and adjusting the bass line and adjusting the treble and the mid bass and pumping everything up so where it is that much louder.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to a lot of different bass boosted older music, but a lot of the older music I've listened to, I got turned off from it because to me it sounded like sine tone behind a great song. And I know that there's some guys that are spending a lot more time and effort in doing it with this older music, but that's a big turnoff to me, you know. And it's because I'm kind of weird. Like if the first time I hear a song, I hear the cover, I won't like the original.
Right.
So I don't like changes to my music. You know what I mean? And I'm used to this stuff because I've been listening to it for 30 years.
Yeah.
And, so it's the bass boosted stuff. I tend to kind of gravitate away, even though I love the music. I don't like it bass boosted.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe I haven't heard the right DJ, because I know there's some guys, like I said, that put
look up DJ Rusticles. I know I'm gonna hear a lot of grief from this, but look up DJ Rusticles. He actually does some really quality sounds, even with some of the older stuff all the way up to the newer. You can turn that bass off and it sounds just as clear as it normally would, but it also, you give it bass and it's a whole new level.
Okay, well, I've got Rusticles. I don't guess I've listened to any of the older stuff.
I'm gonna try and build a system where I can do hair tricks and stuff with the old music. It's the old music. You know?
Well, you'll need an episode.
It can happen.
Right.
Oh, right. No. Oh, no. No epicenters.
Do what?
I said no epicenters. Let's stick with the DSPs.
The epicenter is what we used whenever the bass was almost not
Back in the
existing.
80s.
You definitely don't want to use an epicenter with new music. But if you're going to go in there and play Journey or play
Yes.
Austin or Chicago, that's where the epicenter shines, and that's why it was designed. And if you know when to turn it on and turn it off, it's perfectly usable product.
Right.
Generally speaking, when some young guy comes in here and he tells me he listens to hip hop and he wants an epicenter, I'm like, no, don't make me put an epicenter in your car. And I'll tell him, if you're buying the subs from me, I'm not warranting them.
Right.
They'll kill them.
Yeah.
But again, when you got back in the 70s, whenever nobody had subs that would play that low. So none of the audio systems, all the recording studios, they didn't try to worry about getting that bass in there, even though the cellos that were playing down 18 hertz.
Right.
The bass is in that music. You got to suck it out of there. And that's what Audio Control did with that piece. But like I say, it's for the last 20 years, it's not really been that useful in music.
Yeah. Well, cool. Hey, so out there, anybody watching, do y'all have any questions before we start to sign off? It's like 8 o'clock. I see Brandon still at his shop, and I'm hungry.
Yeah, I need to roll out.
Yeah.
Food.
I don't see any. Yeah, I don't see any.
No, sir.
Brandon, man, I appreciate you coming on here with us.
You bet, guys. I appreciate y'all.
I know we learned something. I did. So, and I think probably
nice to meet you.
Too.
Yeah, good to meet you, Jimmy. Glad everybody. I guess we'll do this more regularly. You do this every week, don't you?
Every Monday night. Yep. And you're welcome to come back whenever you like.
All right. Well, I'll try to remember that.
For sure.
All right, fellas. Well, we will see you guys next week. This weekend, I'm going to go ahead and say this. Shows, I think it's Mobile, Alabama, Friday night at UAF. A car show in Theodore, which is right outside Mobile, Alabama, on Saturday. And then where's your place on Sunday, right? In Brandon? Brandon at in Shreveport?
Is it coming up that quick?
I think it's this weekend.
It sure is.
Sunday, yeah.
This coming Sunday.
Yeah. So we got 3 shows this weekend, Mississippi and Louisiana. So we hope to see you guys at one of those, and we'll see you guys later. Enjoy our little video that I worked for 5 weeks on. And we'll see you guys next week.
All right, guys.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate you.